So let's look at another piece of this code, which is the most important part of it, is basically the part that we are declaring a Boolean variable, which we are here, Boolean finished equals false, and of course a while loop, which we talked about in chapter 4. So the structure is basically as this. So this is the while loop that we have here. And we use this finish flag that becomes true when we want to end the loop. So that remember, we always have to have a way to end our loop. So we make sure that it is initially false. And the main part of the loop, the part that is being done repeatedly, is actually in here. So we basically want to continue. We keep continuing until the condition becomes false. So basically, in here, it reads the input, and then it asks the responder to generate a response, and then it print out the response. If there is a message that says bye, the loop is going to be finished. So if the person says start, it will actually finish. It will finish the loop. Sometimes you can actually guess the method by the name of it, and this is a great example here. Start with. So in here we are using a start with method because the method is called on the input variable, which actually holds a string object. So it must be a method of a string class. So what does this method do? As we said, as the name of it shows, basically it tests whether the input string starts with the word bye. And then if it does that, then it will actually end the loop. So even if somebody types bye-bye, bye everyone, bye all, or whatever, it will actually, it's just going to look at those 3 letters at the beginning. So we saw the source code for support system. We can click here and then see the source code for the responser as well, which in here again you have a class, responder class. In here you construct a responder and you generate a response. So the string that will actually display the response is going to say, that sounds interesting, tell me more. And then if we want to see the source code for the input reader, we can click on it again and see the documentation for input reader. And right now you can see the source code, but how about if you want to see the documentation? You can see that you can just click here and see the documentation. So basically in here you are using a java.long object and that's the input reader. So that's basically you're using that library, and then you have a class here, and then you actually it shows you the constructor, the method summary that you are using. Also it's showing the constructor detail and the documentation for it, and the method detail and what it will return, actually what that method is doing. So you can see the documentation of each of those classes that we have created. So let's create a new customer and also a responder. So we can just create new and we have it. And we can click on it and we can basically inspect the real situation of a customer and see what fields it's included. So we can click on inspect. So it has all of these fields, integer, all of that. And anything that has a line, we can even inspect more. So we can click there and inspect even more. So You can even inspect more to find the length, for example. So these are basically the things that is included in there. And also we can do the same thing. Basically click here and inspect. For the responder, there is nothing. So in here we are going to actually click on string get, and then we put hi, and we put that in there, and then for the response we generate a response that says that sounds interesting, tell me more, and we click on it. And then we want to actually create a new support system as well in here, and then we are going to click on it. And so in here, so when I put hi and I hit enter, it says that sounds interesting, tell me more. I can put another thing, hello, says the same thing, video gaming, it's gonna tell me the same thing, that sounds interesting, tell me more. Because this is not a smart system, it's not an intelligent support system, so it would just does these things. And we can actually work on it to make it more intelligent. So, but when I put by, you see we'll realize that because we are using that method that starts with by. So it says nice talking to you and bye, and the program stops. You see I cannot type anymore. So again, as you can see, we can write more words, anything, and the system is just says sound interesting. But if we put the by, for example, as I said, even with capital letter, you can see it says that sound interesting. So if you want it to be more intelligent, you have to put different scenarios of be with capital letter, of maybe, you know, if even somebody puts space by, it's not gonna work. So you have to kind of make the system more intelligent by typing, by having different scenarios, which in Tech Support 2 project, you will see that it's more intelligent and it's more complicated. So if I put just a bye, you can see that it would just type the message, nice talking to you, bye. So let's look at the PowerPoint presentation, and we're just going to go through the main loop. Just look at the theoretical part of it. So as we said, the main loop body, we have this. And so for example, if the customer is just going to type something in, the response will generate that response, and the system will print out that response that we saw in more detail. Please tell me more detail. But if the customer types the words by, as we said, we put a condition in here, and if it's finished, then it will exit the loop. So for our loop, we always have to remember that we need to put a condition so that the loop can exit. You don't want an infinitive loop, because the loop can keep going and going and going, and it's not good to have that. So that's one thing that you want to remember about that. And so that's why you need to put a exit condition here, and then we looked at the start with method that will just start with the word BYE. So you see, you don't have any other scenarios, like you don't have it with capital letter, you don't have it if it has a space and all that. So the documentation of Jabber library is in HTML format, which I showed you, and it is readable in the browser. So if I go back to our documentation, you can see that we have them here in the this format. And remember, we are talking about the API. API is everything, is all these packages. They are called API. They are application programmer interface. And so there is a interface description for all the library. And of course we have all these descriptions. So I showed you in the collection, you can actually find the interface, and basically you can just use some part of it. So that's what it means there. So that's what you saw, the construction description, the field summary. These are the things that you can see in there. So let's look at interfaces versus implementation. Basically, as we said that in the documentation, we can see different pieces of information. And there are some things like name of the class, the general description, the purpose of that class, a list of constructor and methods, the parameters and the return types for constructor and methods, and also a description of purpose of each constructor and method. So all this information together is called interface of a class. So the interface doesn't show the source code that implements the class. So basically, if a class is well described, then a programmer doesn't need to see the source code to be able to use that class. Seeing the interface provides all that information that the programmer might need to use. So basically, the documentation, it doesn't include private fields, private methods, the bodies, or the source code of method. So basically, the source code behind the scene, which make the class work, is called the implementation of that class. And normally the programmer works on implementation of one class at a time, and while they are making use of several other classes using that interface. So in here we are talking about documentation for a start with method. It's public and it is starting with the string, the text prefix. We can test if this starts, if the string starts with a specific prefix. So the prefix was BYE. So if it's going to only look for these 3 letters, if it's going to start with. So for example, if we type BYE, it's going to exit. It's going to understand only those 3 letters by, and it's going to exit. But if we write goodbye, it's not going to exit because it's not those 3 letters as a prefix. And it's going to continue, say, tell more, please tell me more, please tell me more. So the parameter is the prefix we are going to have. It will return true if that's the case, and false if we say, for example, goodbye. It's not going to find those prefix and it's going to continue in that loop. So as we said, we have some problems with just using the word by. So we want to be able to use different variation, for example, be in capital letter, or if we have spaces before the string. So you can use these ones with the string ends with, index of, substring to uppercase. So you can use these variation. And also we can use the trim to be able to remove spaces at the beginning and end of the string. We can use this method to handle the problem that we have with the spaces. So these are some ways that maybe you can actually improve your program by and we use it in the second part of the support system. Another thing, one more important thing that we want to remember, string objects are immutable. That means you cannot change them once they have been created. Let's look at the string. So what I did, I went down here. So I kind of keep going down until I found the word string. And you can see the class string is under java.long library. And you can see all the implementation interfaces that are out there. So you have all the documentation here about this. So the field summary, all of them in here, the methods that they have been using, the case insensitive orders and all that. So you can see one of these methods that we talk about ends with, for example. You can put like so if the word do this, if it ends with the word by, for example. So a different scenario, you will have different methods. So basically you have different way of using a string. So we can look at that. Also index of, you can actually put something like that. So each of these methods, you can use it in different scenario. To uppercase, maybe you might need to use that method. So you can see you can find all those methods that are out there. Even we just talked about the trim, returns a copy of a string with leading and trailing white space omitted. So even as we said, if you, somebody put a space bar and then put the word by, if we use the method trim, we can solve that problem. So that they don't, like even if they put the space, still it would recognize those three prefix letter by. As we saw using the Java library, classes are organized into packages basically. Classes from the library must be imported using an import statement and accept classes from java.long package. You can actually import the whole java.long, but it's not necessary because it has so many packages and so many different classes. So imagine if you come here and you want to basically import all java.long, it will have all these. So if I click on here, you will see it will have all of these things. So maybe at the beginning, when you're not familiar which class you want, you might want to import everything, but it will be very slow and you have probably so many classes or interfaces that you might not even need. So once you learn what classes you want to use, you will only import that class. So I would not suggest you to import the whole java.long library. This is because it has a lot of things here, as you can see. So you just probably, after you learn more, you only import the class that you might need. So as we said, you can, once you learn how to find your classes and you became kind of a little bit more expert, then you can actually just pick that class. So how do we import single class? We can use the import java.util.ArrayList. ArrayList is a class, so you can just import that one class. If you want to import the whole package of java.util, you can basically use the asterisk, import java.util.asterisk. It will import everything. So basically, if I go back and show you this, so it will import everything which you might not need. So I will not suggest you to do that. So importation, it doesn't involve the source code insertion. So for example, if we want to use the random library class, we can just import that class, the random class from the java.util. So you can use that to generate random numbers. In our case, for the example that we had, it's not a good idea to use random answers because you want to, like whatever customer asks, you want to kind of be specific to that question. So, but if you want to generate random numbers or random responses, you can basically use this class. So for selecting random responses, you can actually use this and use the responder method and basically just use this to create it, this source code to create the random responses. So in here we create a new object and all the responses will be in the array list, which is a collection of responses. So we are using the method field response. We will have a selection of all the responses and it will randomly creating using all random generator kind of a response. And basically you will have different response sizes and the response will also get an index. So that's how you can basically select random responses. But for our project, this is not a good idea because we don't want to create random responses.